All right. Good evening, everyone. It is wonderful to have you back with us tonight. We are going to be talking with my friend Susan Tuttle, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her, as I think you will really love her books because she writes contemporary romance, but there's some real heart to them. And it's more than what I would call fluffy romance, but still all the sprinkles and fun as well. So, Susan, would you like to tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I've been writing for a couple years now. Well, first of all, I live up in the wonderful state of Michigan, so I love my state. I have to give it a shout out. Um, and I've been writing pretty much all my life, but only pursuing writing for the last maybe decade. Was published a couple years ago, and I do women's ministry at my church. I love that. I love talking to ladies about Jesus. And I think that that just translates as one of the reasons I love to write is, and why I love to write romance is because I think God is just the biggest romancer of all. And so that's how my stories come out.
I love
And
that.
yeah, it's funny because it actually took me a lot of years to say, I write romance. I'm a pastor's wife and I write romance. I don't know why they felt like there was a stigma attached to that. And now I'm like, no, I write romance because Jesus just, his love for us pursues us. And that's how my characters and my stories come out. So
And I love that because I think sometimes we do kind of go, because I know I feel that way. I'm like, I write suspense, and then there's romance, and we do that. And I think we forget like what you just said, that God really is the author of romance. I mean, his love affair with us is the true primary romance. And so anything we're writing that can point people towards that perfect romance that he wants with us, it shouldn't be something that we're like, oh, I write it on the side. It should be, no, this is what I do. This is the part of God's character that I'm reflecting in my books.
yes, amen. I'm like, yes, amen. That is exactly it. And that's the part I've gotten to. And I do sometimes still go like, it's so funny to me because obviously romance with kissing scenes, I mean,
Yeah.
it's great. I love it. But it's so funny because my dad will tell me he reads my books, and that's where I'm now more like, oh, okay, dad. But I love the genre. I love what we're able to do with it. I love that we can go balance both some humor in it, but also just some deep moments and just show Jesus through it all. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Jessica is like, Susan is a fabulous author. Love, love, love her romance. And Nisi is like, I think she's responding to our conversation about, God and romance and just saying that's beautiful. And I think it is. And I think it's one of those things that we need to just really be able to step into when that's part of the story. I won't say it's always going to be the strongest element in
Oh,
my
yeah.
writing, but it is part of the story. And there are those times when you're just like, oh, that's really a godlike moment, that hero's behaving in a way that Jesus would behave. And
Exactly.
that's just, it's so cool when that happens.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And I think that that's what's so neat is the beauty of that part of the story when you said the character of Christ. And I think in
Yeah.
all of the aspects of story, when we have the ability to show the character of Christ, whether it's through a moment where we're able to share our faith very overtly on the page, or it's more of an analogy, I
Yeah.
love to see how that comes out in story. And I think that's why I've always been so drawn to storytelling, because in the Bible, that's what he did. He took, Christ told parables, and he was a storyteller, and he is the ultimate author. So to be able to carry that through a story and however he has it come out, I think I loved when you said the character of God, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Well, and I think that it's one of those things that I don't know about you and your writing, but God's always showing me things. And it's like he's always using it to go a little deeper in an area that maybe I'm like, nope, nope, that's okay. That's hands off, God. And he's like, oh, really? Well, then
Yes,
let's work on this in this story. And
yes,
in order for you to do it, you're going to have to go deep in this area.
yes. Yeah, I will. Isn't it interesting how I think no matter what we're doing, if we are writers or whether we're in ministry or whether we're working in a career that we feel like maybe we're not ministering to others, I think that God is always using us and drawing us deeper in what we do so that his glory can be shown. And it's that, like you said, I'm like, I think sometimes we resist that because we don't want to look funny or we don't want to go through the hard stuff. But when we do, what he can take from that and use from that to show others is amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that there's that whole idea of the analogy that Jesus taught in parables. So when people are like, oh, you just write fiction, I'm like, well, isn't that kind of what Jesus was doing with parables?
Yeah.
You know, talking in a way that we can relate to. And when Catherine Ray was on here, a few weeks ago, and we were talking about Jane Austen, and I'm like, oh, she, you know, she's still so relevant. She's like, well, she was reading contemporary in her day and age. And I went, you're right, she
Sure,
was.
she was.
And yet we don't think about that. I'm like, I don't know that anyone's going to be reading my words in 100 years, but it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
so long as what we're doing is, you know, a creative endeavor with God that allows the Holy Spirit to breathe life into whoever the reader is.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I think, you know, one of the things that I love about Christian fiction and writing Christian fiction is the fact that there does feel like there's an eternal impact and that God's presence is on what we're writing. And I'm not saying that, I mean, I know a lot of Christian authors write for the clean market too. So I'm saying like when we are able to, as a Christian, pour into the writing and allow God's spirit to be on that, there's an internal impact that is in there, whether it's clean market, whether it's inspirational market, whatever the genre may be. I'm like, he can use that because that's who he is. He uses everything. When we give it to him, he uses everything. And to be able to think about where it's going to go and who it's going to touch and how he's going to use it that we may never see, I think it's just such a neat thing to be a part of.
Well, and that's one of those things, you know, when I imagine heaven, I'm like, I know it's going to be overwhelming to see the people that we've touched that we're not aware of. And then as writers, it's like my day job, I'm working with college students all the time. I'm like, I'm sure there's things I've done, hopefully positive things that I'm not aware of. But then but with writing and the way that the world operates, I mean, it's like the words go out and we're just faithful to put them out there and we have no idea who's reading them, what the impact is. And it's so humbling to think that in heaven, there could be people coming up and going, your character made this difference in my life. And God used this. And it's amazing to think about that, but it's also really heavy to be like, okay, God, I need to be faithful in this. And how do I make sure I'm, you know, doing and writing the stories that you have for me? Because it's kind of a heavy weight to go. As Christians, we know there's more to it than just a good story.
Yes.
And that's what we have to be faithful to. But there's also that knowledge that there's more to it. So
no, I completely agree with you. And I think that's where we need to stay, you know, that's why it's so important in our lives, no matter what we're doing, to stay grounded with him, to spend time with him, to be listening to his voice and direction. Because have you ever found it when you're writing that you anticipated the story or the character to go one way and he totally has you take like a left turn? I think that's what's so interesting. And I don't know about you, I'm more of a pantser than a plotter. And so a lot of times on the journey, I might have an idea or be writing a scene and all of a sudden it'll be like, wait a second, this is going a completely different direction than I thought. And I might not even understand why in the moment, but I'm just writing along. And you finally hit a point in your story where God like starts tying up that what he's been writing, the little hints he's been dropping all along.
You know? I love that part of the process because and it depends on the book for me as to whether I'm a pantser or a plotter. Because I've written for a lot of publishing houses where it had to be plotted. And then I've written for others where I had 2 pages and I'm like, what the heck am I writing now? Yeah, I can do both. But, you know, it doesn't matter if you're plotted or pantsing, there's still that discovery process. And there is nothing like that moment when you're like, oh God, now I see what you were doing. And
I had no idea.
Oh, and one of the most fun for me was Shadowed by Grace, which was my Monuments Men World War II book. or yeah, Shadowed by Grace. But I just kind of plopped the title on there. I was like, I don't know if it'll stick. They'll probably change it, but it needs a title. So Shadowed by Grace. And then they loved the title. And I realized, I'm like, I just thought I was putting 3 words at the top of a proposal to be a placeholder. And then I realized, oh no, this book is entirely about how her life was shadowed by God's grace, even when she didn't recognize him. And I was like, the chills I got when I realized that had been the overarching theme from like the earliest moments. And I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then I read back through and I'm like, oh my gosh, God, you put
There
it
it
all
is.
here. It's all here.
No, I did the same thing with my first book, At First Glance. I knew that my main character was into antiques, and she goes in and she does estate sales, and so she helps stage things, and
Oh, that's
I
cool.
thought it was all about her being into antiques. What was funny is she walked into a house and she saw these perfume bottles, and I started realizing she loves perfume, and I started researching perfume, and I
Oh,
didn't realize until I went through it about how God was going to use the analogy of this perfume and its worth, and how she could see worth in something, but she couldn't see it in herself, and how the fragrance of Christ is in us. And it was just this neat thing to see how he progressed it all the way through. And I get to the end, and there was this just talking about the worth, and I was like, oh, I see why you had me doing this all along, you know?
yeah. And
So,
that's where I'm like, I think as Christian authors, we get to experience that
yeah.
part of the process that other people just don't recognize. And I think that's such a loss because God is first and foremost a creator. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
that's the first thing he did. And that's been the thing that he's never stopped doing. And so when we're operating in that space, we really are reflecting his divine nature. So what's really fun is lots of people keep popping in that you are a new to them author.
Oh,
So
yeah.
because of that, which I love when people are able to discover new authors because I'm like, you don't have to like my books. I want to help you find authors that you're going to love their stories.
And I
So
am a reader for so I'm the same way. I
yeah,
love discovering new authors because at heart I'm also a complete reader. So have been since
uh,
I'm tiny.
yeah, exactly. I think I'm at 51 books so far this year, which obviously I'm going to have to start writing soon. But once this is over, once the semester is over. But oh, and Rachel's McDaniel just popped in and she's like, your stories are amazing. So Jessica and Rachel have both been talking about how wonderful your stories are, but there are a lot of people who haven't discovered you yet. So they're doing that now. What is your genre? What kind of stories do you write? What should they expect when they pick up a Susan L. Tuttle book?
All right. Well, I write contemporary romance. So they should definitely expect it's set in today, and it's going to have romance, lots of love, lots of kisses, and
Lots of the sparkles.
exactly. You know, they'll feel good. Definitely with hope. I do try to add in. I always think of it as like I definitely there's some heavy moments sometimes in the books, but I tend to let my side, I have a very dry sense of humor, and it gets me in trouble quite often. And so I've tried to learn to temper that, but sometimes in my books, I'm able to kind of let that side of me
Let it
come out.
go.
And because I can have the two characters banter,
Yes.
and so there's always going to be a little bit of that bantering dialogue. I love writing dialogue. It's probably one of my favorite things. And so definitely good dynamics between the two leads and their friends. But yeah, it's in always a happily ever after, even when we deal with tough stuff. And yeah,
So
romance.
I've got Then Again, Maybe. I was just pulling that up on my Kindle because that's the one of yours I've been reading lately and
Oh,
really, really enjoying. But what I like about it is it's, from what I've read so far, it feels very much like real life. That it's this idea of these are real characters and they're experiencing real life issues. It's not all sweet and candy, but there's still, like you said, there's that hope and there's real life. And so Linda wants to know, what book do you recommend that people read first? Because I think that's the second one, isn't
that's the
it?
second one. So I have I'm Then Again Maybe is the second in a series. So At First Glance would be the first one in that series. they can be read alone, but always, you know, you get a little bit more out of the characters, a little bit more understanding out of the story when you read them in order. I will tell you, if you pick up At First Glance first, the main character, who isn't Then Again Maybe, is Belle. It's the sister. And she is not a very likable character in the first story. But you get a little bit of a picture as to why by the end of that story. And then you really kind of get to see her come into her own a little bit in the second story. And then I have another book out that's called Love You Truly, but that's a standalone. I have had a little bit of fun of being able to set them a little bit in the same world, so you get a little cameo, but it is a complete standalone as far as the characters that are in that one. So just depends on what you're looking for, if you're more of a series person or you like just that one and done. So
yeah. And I love that when there are those cameos or Easter egg moments where you're like, if you've read the other books, you're like, oh, that's so fun. But it's not any kind of stopper for someone who that's the first book that they're picking up.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a great way to give kind of a benefit to your readers who are following you through the books without alienating new people. So
I love that as a reader. And I even love that, like watching some TV shows and stuff. I love to pick up on the tiny little details of things that I'm like, oh, I recognize that. Like you said, Easter eggs. I love them.
Yeah. And, you know, Brandolyn Collins is the one who taught me what Easter eggs were in writing.
Oh.
And it's so much fun because I see, well, okay, I'm a big Marvel fanatic.
I was going to say Marvel, 100%. Yeah. Yes. Yep. That's where.
Oh my gosh. Falcon and the Winter Soldier, people.
I know. One more episode, but I can't wait to see what happens.
No, one more?
One more. They only did 6. I don't know
They're
why.
killing me.
I know. Me too. Me too.
I know, don't worry, we won't give any spoilers for those of you who are a little slower on getting through the series, but oh my gosh, I guess that means Loki's coming next or something.
Yes, that's what I've heard. So I'm hoping, but that's not till summer. I'm like, come on, people.
We're gonna have to wait that long?
That's what I've heard.
Oh my gosh.
My husband and daughter tell me.
Oh, WandaVision was amazing. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier, oh my gosh, the way they're going with this, it's just brilliant. But talk about the Easter eggs and when they bring in like an entire character.
I know, right?
Like, ah!
And you recognize it, you see it getting put together and they do tiny things in. I love it.
And it's not all happy. You know, there's one of them in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm like, oh, what did you do to her? Oh,
I know. But that's what I love about storytelling. I love it when they can pull on your emotions, like and pull on your emotions in one scene, but have you laughing in the. I'm like, it's a ride, and I love that.
Yeah, you know? It is. It's so
good.
Much fun.
They do good storytelling.
They do, and there's my kids always joke or laugh at me because I'm like, when I'm watching, I'm like, this is work, and they're like, no, you just like Marvel, Mom. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. They are masterful at storytelling and character arcs and making it all come together.
Yeah, so. It's research I love.
Exactly. I'm like, so, you know, you guys get to watch the movies you want to, and I get to call it work. And but I did when we were watching them all through I'm looking for my notebook here. I don't see it, but I had a notebook where I was literally last summer when we were binging all of them in order. I was taking notes on character development and stuff. And they're like, oh, Mom, you in your notebook. And I'm like, you're supposed to just enjoy the movie. And I'm like, I am. This is me.
This is how I enjoy it.
This is my left brain having fun in story world.
So true, though.
So you're a writer. You're a wife. You're active in your church. And you guys have kids, too, right?
3. Yeah. Yes.
So, and you're busy. How do you find time to write? What kind of advice would you give to someone who's saying, you know, I'd love to write, but man, life's just too busy?
You know, it's funny because I've just been talking to some of my other writer friends about this because sometimes I lament the fact that I feel like I don't have enough time to write. And I have one friend that just recently reminded me, you know, because as authors, we can kind of have our ups and downs when it comes to the writing process. But she was reminding me that she's like, I know it feels like you don't have that, but you always get it done. You always get it done. And I think what it has become for me is I do have a lot of, because we homeschool. So my oldest 2, he'll be 21 in like a week. And then I know, like, come on. And then my 18-year-old, so they're through school. My youngest is in high school and I'm still homeschooling her. So that definitely takes time. I work on women's ministry, which is another pure love of my heart. And then the writing. And as you know, writing isn't just sitting and writing. There's so many other things that you have to juggle, and even with the marketing end or being out there. And so I have found that it's snippets of time for me. And I think
Yeah.
when it's something that you really love doing and you feel like it's kind of where your purpose and your passion meet, and kind of part of the gifts and the talents that God has given you, you will find a way to make it work. And for some people, that is scheduling time on their calendar and scheduling blocks. That does not always work for me in this season of my life. So right now, it's day to day, basically, where I look at that day. Because I'm also right now, my parents are aging, and I am blessed to live close to them and be able to really help take care of them right now. And so I kind of look at my day and say, okay, well, what are my responsibilities that are family related? What do I have to do for women's ministry? And then what do I have to do for school for my daughter? And then where do I have pockets of time? Yeah. And so I kind of look for those pockets of time, and in the morning, put in my head that my goal is, even if it's a half hour, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to use that half hour to the best of my ability. And as my friends that know me and that I talk to on a regular basis, they know that sometimes I'm really good at that, and sometimes I might go a day and not get a word written. But God is good, and when he calls us to something, he equips us and he enables us to finish it. And he is truly the author and the finisher. And if we are faithful to be obedient and work to the best of our capability, he meets us. Like when he says he meets us in our weakness, he means it.
Oh, absolutely.
So I would say, just don't feel like you have to have it all planned out. If you have to do it day by day, do it. But at least get it written. For those of you that are starting out writing, the fact that you can finish a book, even if it's a short book, get it written. Don't give up and just finish it, because so many people want to be a writer and they never finish that first book. And there's something about finishing that first book that you go, okay, I can do this. And absolutely, it enables you to keep going.
Well, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom to what you were just saying about the seasons. Because, when I started writing, I had two basically toddlers. And I was doing a day job, and we had the toddlers, but my husband was working on a grad degree. So when he would study and the kids were in bed, I was like, this is my time to try writing. Yeah. And next thing you know, I had a contract and a book coming out, and it just that was the rhythm for a while. And then we had another child, and then I started teaching, and, life just kind of kept shifting. And then this last year with COVID, I'm like, teaching at Purdue has taken all of my creativity.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it has just sucked me dry, and I've got a proposal out right now. So I was like, yay, I got a proposal done. And I had to go, you know what, that's okay. This is the season where I had to direct a lot of my effort that way, but the semester's almost over and I'm itching. I'm just like so ready. I'm like, I don't even know. I've got a novella in a Christmas collection. And I'm like, okay, that's me, people, and it's one of those, I'm like, okay, I have been frustrated with myself that I haven't gotten writing done. And then I had to go, but you know what? If I'd had a contract this year, I probably it would have been too much. It would have been that thing too much to be able to do my day job really well. And I had a book come out and it's been great. But now I'm like, okay, but now teaching is going to go back more to normal next year. And I'm like, okay, and now I can have the space in my brain this summer to be like, okay, let's work on this. And it's that I always tell people 500 words a day, if you do that consistently, will give you a full length book by the end of the year that you can at least edit. And it's amazing. Yeah. Once you get back in the rhythm, the words will come faster.
I would agree with that.
Startup, which I'm already gearing up. I'm like, okay, the first week of May is going to stink. I'm going to be like beating my head against a wall.
Yes.
But I've done this enough now that I'm like, but I know if I keep showing up and if I keep doing it, I'll get back in that rhythm and that routine. Yeah. And that's why normally I like to just stay in that, because we don't have that startup angst. So Marilyn wants to know, where are you from? There are several people who are watching who are from Michigan. So what part of Michigan are
Oh, sure.
you in?
West Michigan. I am in West Michigan.
Okay, so
So if I hold up, well, let me get it right here. If I hold it up, I am like down here, so closer to the lake. I'm between Holland and Grand Rapids.
oh, okay.
So yep, and I mean, which is a beautiful, beautiful place to be. I can get to the Lake Michigan in like 20 minutes and spend the day there, and come home and sleep in my own bed. So
That's awesome.
yeah, we
One
are
of our favorite places as a family is Mackinac Island. So,
beautiful.
oh, I love it. But, we're in Indiana and we're 2 hours from Chicago. So we're kind of northwest-ish,
Okay, yeah, yep.
Purdue, Lafayette. It's 10 hours because we have to go
All the way
all
up.
the way up. And so people are like, oh, it's Michigan. You can just go there. I'm like, no, it's
No.
all the way up to that lovely.
People don't think about how long Michigan is. Michigan is a very long state.
Yeah, a very long one. But we love, love, love going to the island, and just it's a place that we all just can. It's almost like we have an exhale the
Yes.
moment we hit the ferry, and then we hit the island, and we're like, whew.
It's great. We love Mackinac Island too. We've only gone a handful of time with our. You would think we live here, we would go more often because we always enjoy it when we do. But I think sometimes when it's where you live, sometimes you don't travel there as much as you should. But it's beautiful. The island is beautiful.
Yeah, well, and I hear great things about like Holland, Michigan, and that's a whole lot closer. And
yes.
Because it's 10 hours, we just always like dart up the length of the state. And then on the way back, we're like, we got to get home, and it's an all-day drive.
Uh-huh.
There's so much in Michigan that we've driven by. And
the west coast of Michigan is gorgeous. Like it's beautiful. We've actually done that a couple times where we'll go get in the car and drive. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So how can people connect with you? Do you have a newsletter? I know you've got a website. What's the best way for people to connect with you? Instagram? What works?
So all the above. I have a Facebook page. One thing is, so my name is a pretty common name, Susan Tuttle.
It is. I did not realize how common it was till I started looking.
I know, it's pretty sick. And not only that, but there are other Susan Tuttles who have written or done photography and stuff. So yeah. I had to make sure to use my middle initial. So you'll always find me with my middle initial. So Susan L. Tuttle. Instagram, I hang out there a lot, and Facebook on my page. So my Susan L. Tuttle author page. And then I do have a newsletter, which you can sign up for off of my Facebook page or my website. So those are really the places. I used to be a lot more, I would blog regularly because I love doing devotions and such, but life has just been so busy in this season that I just have not, it's something I would love to get back to. It's another just creative muscle that I love using. But that'll be another season, but those are the easiest places to connect with me.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but when I started blogging years ago, I used to just journal and journal and journal and journal. I mean, like I've got stacks of journals. And then I started blogging and was like, man, I'm just not journaling anymore. And my husband was like, but Cara, your blog is your journal. I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Huh, just a very public journal.
I know. Nope, I did the same thing. And that's kind of where I started out, was blogging. That's what got me writing again. When my kids were little. And so I started blogging, and then it morphed back into stories. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's been great to have you join me tonight. And thanks to everyone who was so active on the comments and everything. It's always fun to help you discover new authors. And so today it was Susan L. Tuttle. And I have really enjoyed the book that I've read of hers, and think that you'll enjoy her writing, especially if you enjoy contemporary romance. And they're just really well done. And so I think you'll enjoy checking out her books. And then next week we have Christy Ann Hunter. So yeah, and then Robin Lee Hatcher the week after that. So be sure to keep coming back and checking us out, because it's always fun just to introduce you to my author friends. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a fantastic night. And I'm gonna find the,
I know, I always have to find the button, right?
oh, there it is. All right.